Look everyone, in this wild mountain range, so many charging posts have been installed. The national subsidies have all gone to these people. And in this wild mountain range, there are more than 100 charging posts, none of which are used. It has been installed for more than a year, but none of them can work properly. Just like the chip industry, the new energy vehicle industry in China is one that the Beijing government has supported with astonishing subsidies. But despite the heavy subsidies, China's so-called Asia's largest new energy vehicle company has ended its 12-year losing streak and officially declared bankruptcy and restructuring. How did all this happen? In July 2022, China's Yangtze Motor was approved by the court for bankruptcy reorganization. It's equivalent to a formal declaration of bankruptcy. To date, it owes its employees more than 50 million RMB, or about US 7.23 million, and has external liabilities of about 430 million US dollars. Yangtze Motor, known as Hangzhou Changjiang Automobile Company Limited, was once a star in the Chinese new energy vehicle industry. When it was first founded, it was a big hit in China, with a buzz that rivaled that of Tesla. In 2017, Yangtze Motor acquired a dual license approved by both the China Development and Reform Commission and the Ministry of Industry and Information Technology, which means that it was qualified to manufacture both traditional fuel vehicles and new energy vehicles. Previously, only one major Chinese car manufacturer had received the dual license. There are many new energy vehicle manufacturers in China, but most are foundry car manufacturers, and so far less than 20 have been able to obtain the dual license. The dual license is not only a superpass to build vehicles, allowing access to heavy government subsidies, but also allows a company to obtain a large amount of investment in the market. As a result, Yangtze Motor became one of the pioneers in China's new energy vehicle industry. Around 2017, Yangtze Motor opened production bases across China and also built a production base in the US. It had a cumulative annual production capacity of 600,000 vehicles. Among them was an investment agreement with the government of Foshan City, Guangdong Province, involving an amount of approximately US 1.75 billion. It also established R&D centers in Beijing and Shanghai, power battery production bases in Tianjin and Liaoning, and a battery material production base in Chongqing. The company's winning position from the get-go was closely related to its founder's identity. The founder, Cao Zhong, has a strong political background. He worked for the State Planning Commission, the predecessor of China's National Development and Reform Commission, which was the top economic authority in Red China. He also worked for the Huizhou city government in Guangdong Province, where he became the city's top economic official and was stationed in Hong Kong. In 2001, he worked for Shougang Group, China's largest steel group, where he took the helm of Shougang Holding Hong Kong Limited Company, a joint venture between Ka-shing and the company, turning around its 4 listed companies in Hong Kong from losses to profits. Ka-shing was once the richest man in Asia and was the richest man in Hong Kong for many years. But a man of such power has now become the subject of 65 legal executions, a whopping 190 lawsuits, and 131 spending restraining orders. Such a reversal is unexpected to many people, but when reflecting on the development process of Yangtze Motor, it is not hard to feel the inevitable direction of this outcome. Yangtze Motor was established in 2013 by the Five Dragons Group, which reorganized the Hangzhou Changjiang bus factory. The main business of the Five Dragons Group was batteries, and Ka-shing once had its shares up to 8%, making him its 3rd largest shareholder. Since 2016, Ka-shing began to withdraw his capital and dropped out of the list of the top 10 shareholders, apparently no longer optimistic about the development of Yangtze Motor. In 2018, Yangtze Motor was rumored to have a broken capital chain. In August 2020, it filed for bankruptcy. In early 2022, Five Dragons Group electric vehicle was disqualified from listing. On July 8, 2022, the court ruled to approve a draft plan to restructure Yangtze Motor. Boss Chow may be gifted in the capital market and rather sensitive to China's macro policies, but his weakness is that he doesn't understand the auto industry. Chinese media outlet China Business Network reported that after obtaining the capital needed to build vehicles, Chao began to look for people who knew about cars. He recruited the then renowned founder in the commercial vehicle field in China, the former CEO of Volvo Canada, and other professional teams. He also hired an internationally renowned consulting firm to provide management consulting. However, during management changes, there was discord among shareholders, a rift in management, and intense internal rivalry. Several major strategic adjustments brought about by management changes were later proven wrong. For example, in 2014, Yangtze Motor had already designed 48 models. In 2016, it released a small all-electric SUV. Before that, it had spent a lot of money on the development and design of passenger vehicles, meaning passenger-oriented vehicles with 9 seats or fewer. It had molds and prototypes already made. But all this money was spent in vain because Yangtze Motor didn't go down this line of passenger vehicles. In 2016, it was adjusted to focus 90% of its efforts on the production of commercial vehicles, that is, large vehicles with more than 9 seats. From 2016 to 2018, the sales volume of this factory's new energy business vehicles was only 3,000 units, as half of the market in China was dominated by Japan's Toyota, and the rest of the market was filled by domestic automakers. Without the sales volume, the vehicles were eventually sold to its subsidiaries or leasing companies. It was the equivalent of exchanging the left hand for the right hand, rendering money spent with no revenue. However, the company kept expanding as we described earlier. From 2015 to mid-2018, Yangtze Motor expanded rapidly, building branches in many places in China and even making grounds overseas. Such enthusiasm had to do with the overall market sentiment in China at the time. Around 2016, the year of Yangtze Motor's rapid expansion, the capital market's pursuit of new energy vehicles almost reached the point of madness. New energy vehicle companies were known as the new force. From 2015 to 2017, there were more than 200 new energy vehicle production projects launched across China, involving an investment amount of more than 1 trillion RMB and a capacity plan for more than 20 million units. Many new automakers emerged, and many traditional companies switched to new energy vehicle manufacturing, allowing the industry chain to grow rapidly. China's new energy vehicle production capacity rose at a staggering rate. Of course, it was due to the CCP's generous subsidy policy. In the nearly 30 years of domestic auto industry development, China hasn't been able to overcome the core technical issues of automobiles in the era of internal combustion engines. The rise of the new energy vehicle industry, represented by electric vehicles, had prompted the CCP's top brass to plan to seize the high ground in the new energy auto industry and supply chain and to dominate the production and sales of this industry by taking drastic steps to overtake its competitors. In 2019, China's State Council released a new energy vehicle industry development plan for 2021 to 2035, targeting new energy vehicle sales at 20% of total new vehicle sales by 2025 and 40% by 2030. According to an American think tank, the Center for Strategic and International Studies, over the past 10 years, the Chinese government has subsidized the new energy vehicle industry in various forms to the tune of approximately US $100.9 billion. Although government subsidies were reduced in 2019, 30.7% of China's new energy vehicle sales revenue still came from subsidies. With the strong support from the government, the international competitiveness of China's new energy vehicles has been steadily increasing.
Last year, BYD started to sell new energy passenger cars to overseas markets. The first batch of 1,500 pure electric SUVs went to Norway. And this year, we're working with a couple of partners to expand into the Netherlands, Sweden, and Germany. And we will also participate in the show in Paris this October to offer quality NEV products to local customers. Our plug-in hybrids have also made great progress in the American market. In the first phase, we want to center on Indonesia and get through to Southeast Asian and Middle Eastern markets. We want to help formalize local NEV standards there. And in the second phase, we want to open up new markets in India and Egypt by exporting key components and building up new factories there. In the third phase, we will enter into the European, Japanese, and South Korean markets.
Sales of new energy passenger vehicles made in China now account for more than 50% of the global market share. The world is witnessing China's new energy vehicle industry dominating global production and sales in this sector, but behind this lies a striking waste of capital. According to Chinese media reports, China's total subsidies to the new energy vehicle industry exceeded US $43.82 billion during the 2 years from 2015 to 2017, and the cumulative investment in the entire industry chain exceeded approximately US $292.1 billion. In addition to the subsidies from the central government, local governments were also required to provide matching subsidies on a 1-to-1 ratio. Fueled by the vortex, it can be said that as long as car companies could build cars, they could receive national subsidies without even considering sales. For example, in 2015, a medium-sized EV of 6 to 8 meters could receive up to US $88,000 in subsidies, while a large EV bus of 10 meters or more could receive up to US $146,000 in subsidies, far more than the cost of building the vehicle. As a result, a peculiar phenomenon has emerged in China. That is, there are a lot of abandoned new vehicles in the wilderness, and they are all new energy vehicles. That is to say, these car companies, large and small, made every effort to cheat the government subsidies and earn the difference between the subsidies and manufacturing costs. They created fake sales by passing from the left hand to the right hand. When there was no place to store the vehicles, they were dumped in the wilderness. Some even dismantled the batteries and used them to remanufacture vehicles to further save on production costs, as batteries were a large part of the cost of electric vehicles in the early days. Of course, many low-quality, new energy vehicles also emerged. The charging station on the side of the road caught fire last night. Look at this car. The battery may have exploded. By 2018, China, while in a trade war with the US, became significantly weaker than before, and the government had discovered that in the new energy vehicle industry there existed a serious fraud, companies cheating subsidies. In 2016, the government investigated 93 new energy vehicle companies and found that as many as 72 of them obtained subsidies by fraud, involving an amount of about $1.36 billion US, with an average of more than US 19 million per enterprise and an average of about US 16,900 per vehicle. This is similar to the highest subsidy of about US 17,500 for an all-electric passenger vehicle in 2013. As a result, the Chinese government began to reduce its subsidies. Since then, the amount of subsidies has dropped and the threshold for receiving them has been raised. Once the government subsidies began to drop, sales of new energy vehicles in China started to fall. It's a trend that has continued to this day. The subsequent pandemic caused a further decline in overall auto sales in China. Those new automakers that hadn't really taken hold in the market were particularly hard hit, and the enthusiasm of capital investment began to cool down. In 2018, Yangtze Motor's capital flow started to break. It was a year that coincided with a significant reduction in subsidies and a significant increase in eligibility requirements for new energy vehicles in China. Subsequently, from 2020 to 2022, subsidies dropped by 10%, 20%, and 30% respectively from the previous year, until they would be completely terminated at the end of 2022. Now, the Chinese government is shifting its subsidies from all-electric vehicles to fuel cell vehicles, which also includes subsidies for hydrogen refueling stations and hydrogen fuel cell passenger vehicles at about US $63,000 per vehicle. Also in 2018, Boss Chow wrote in a letter to shareholders explaining that subsidies are being rolled back, subsidy requirements are being tightened, and the time to receive subsidies is significantly longer than expected, resulting in tight cash flow. Also, regulations require electric vehicles to be driven 20,000 kilometers before they can receive subsidies. He said these reasons contributed to the company's weak performance. In 2018, as share prices of Five Dragons EV, the parent company of Yangtze Motor, continued to fall, the shares of Five Dragons EV pledged by Zhao and other major shareholders were forcibly liquidated by brokerage firms. In 2019, news that Yangtze Motor subsidiaries in Foshan, Guizhou, Chengdu, and Shenzhen owed their employees' wages was seen on the internet. At the same time, Yangtze Motor began to default on payments to suppliers. Then we saw that on July 8, 2022, the court ruled to approve Yangtze Motor's draft restructuring plan. The failure of Yangtze Motor reveals serious problems in its internal management, but it also reflects the overall problems of China's new energy vehicle industry. Since 2015, there were as many as 600 new car-making forces, but in 2019, more than 10 well-known new car-making forces in China defaulted on wages or payments. By 2021, more than 10 well-known brands have gone bankrupt, reorganized, or withdrawn, including well-known brands such as Zoiti Auto, Leopard, and Byton. According to the China Passenger Car Association, there were only 86 car companies that had sales in 2021. That is to say, many local governments provided a lot of land, funds, policies, and other resources for these new car companies, but most projects failed eventually, resulting in bankruptcy or poor performance. Thus, Yangtze Motor is not a one-time case, nor is it just the end of a major car company. The industry, spawned by huge subsidies from the Chinese Communist government, has serious overcapacity problems that will likely plant a time bomb for China's economic development. The impressive sales figures for new energy vehicles in China are in essence due to the tax incentives offered by the Chinese government. With a 10% purchase tax exemption alone, one can save about US $2,900 to $4,400 on a car that costs $29,000. With this kind of government push, many Chinese consumers opt for electric vehicles. In the first 4 months, the growth rate of electricity consumption continued to decline, from 7% at the beginning of the year to minus 1.9% in April, mainly due to the impact of the epidemic and other factors. With the implementation of policies to stabilize the economic market and the influence of high temperature in the summer, the growth rate of electricity consumption continued to pick up in May, June, and July, and the rebound trend was relatively obvious. In 2021, the overall growth in China's auto sales was only 3.8%, failing to exceed the officially declared GDP growth of 8.1%. Meanwhile, conventional vehicle sales in 2021 dropped by 1.02 million units, down 6% year-on-year. In other words, a large part of the hot phenomena of new energy vehicles is largely a grab of share from vehicles with fuel. In other words, overall auto demand in China has weakened. Chinese media reported that by the end of 2020, the total capacity of domestic new energy vehicles would be 26.69 million units, while sales were only 1.37 million units that year, with a capacity utilization rate of only 5.1%. By 2025, the total domestic new energy vehicle production capacity is expected to reach 36.61 million units, while sales are expected to be 5.3 million units, with a capacity utilization rate of less than 15%. There is such a large space of wasted capacity for a 5-year cycle span. With China's population dividend disappearing, the growth rate of total consumption is bound to diminish along with it. The real estate industry is going into depression, the outbreak resurgence, and the CCP's insistence on its zero-COVID policy, plus all sorts of disasters like the extreme heat waves and droughts, all of which will cause this country's economy to decline all the way. It's going to be difficult to boost macro consumption in the future, so once the capacity of new energy vehicles is released, who will consume them? Right now seems to be high time for several new energy car companies in China, but there are also some bad signs. For example, BYD's electric and hybrid vehicle sales in China surpassed 641,000 units in the first 6 months of the year, up a whopping 314.9% compared to the same period last year. Tesla, which has always been a distant first in China, sold 564,000 units in the same period. It looks like China's BYD is already very close to Tesla. Previously, on April 3rd, BYD announced that it would stop the production of fuel cars from March, making it the first car company in the world to announce the cessation of fuel car production officially. However, on August 30th, Bloomberg reported that Berkshire Hathaway, owned by U.S. billionaire and famous investor Warren Buffett, had reduced its stake in BYD, according to a filing with the Hong Kong Stock Exchange on August 30th. It reduced its stake from 20.04% to 19.92%, worth about US $47 million. BYD had previously benefited from Buffett's support of the company. In 2008, when Buffett first invested in BYD, the investment was about US $230 million and is now worth more than $8 billion. Since Berkshire Hathaway's 20.49% stake in BYD entered the central clearing and settlement system in July, the market has been speculating that Buffett is planning to sell the stock. That triggered BYD's biggest drop in nearly 2 years at one point. Whether Buffett will continue to reduce his stake in BYD has drawn public attention. When Buffett sold his entire stake in PetroChina in 2007, he did so in stages. He did so through at least 7 transactions over a period of about 3 months in 2007. In the eyes of investors, Buffett has a unique and peculiar eye for investing in stocks, and as a result, many follow Buffett's business sense. So, is it possible that Buffett also sees the bomb behind China's ambition of new energy vehicles?